Yes, I have NIV, so forgive me. Just joking. Salt and light. You are the salt of the earth. But if the salt loses its saltiness, how can it be made salty again? It is no longer good for anything except to be thrown out and trampled by men. You are the light of the world. A city on a hill cannot be hidden. Neither do people light a lamp and put it under a bowl. Instead, they put it on its stand, and it gives light to everyone in the house. In the same way, let your light shine before men, that they may see your good deeds and praise your Father in heaven. The fulfillment of the law. Do not think that I have come to abolish the law or the prophets. I have not come to abolish them, but to fulfill them. I tell you the truth. Until heaven and earth disappear, not the smallest letter, not the last stroke of a pen will by any means disappear from the law until everything is accomplished. Anyone who breaks one of the least of these commandments and teaches others to do the same will be called last in the kingdom of heaven. But whoever practices and teaches these commandments will be called great in the kingdom of heaven. For I tell you that unless your righteousness surpasses that of the Pharisees and the teachers of the law, you will certainly not enter the kingdom of heaven. Amen.
Amen. Mai. Ikuan sa may focus may kay mong ngihi ko. Sa kajut lang. Kaya ako i-focus si pastor. Nya ikaw na din magkuha na.
Ikaw rin pa?
Oo.
We said all of God's children can't participate in worship, right?
That's right. Praise the Lord.
Absolutely. I wanted to zero in on the idea of a light up on a hill. In the Jewish tradition, they really don't believe in proselytizing. No knocking on doors and saying, I have the truth for you, come and follow us because we have an answer for all of the problems that you could possibly have. That is not the way they were taught to do things. What they believed is that because their faith tradition had so many components of how to treat other people, like look out for the needs of the poor, be kind, especially to people that are foreigners. Make sure that everybody has their fair day in court. Love your neighbor, all those wonderful things. They felt that if they practiced them, that people would see their light and come to them. And in fact, there were a certain amount of people that did. And they didn't have to go and knock on doors and say, here, you know, follow us. Except there was a problem. It's sometimes easier said than done. And so what actually happened is a lot of folks forgot the social justice components of their faith tradition and got down more into the basics of being pious in a religious setting. And again, unfortunately, Judaism has really gone down as a worldwide faith tradition. And the big growth actually is in the Orthodox tradition, because they tend to have large families. That's kind of an expensive way to carry your faith though. They have 8 children, say, you know. But I want to talk about a beacon of light and the people in my life that have really changed me because they have been that light, and they've really made me think twice about faith. Before I actually came to any kind of faith, I had a debate coach, Mr. Young. He was a neat guy. He was just absolutely fabulous. And he would often talk about his faith, but in very broad terms, because this is not something you're supposed to do in a public school. And he always came prepared to class with joy in his heart. And I found out later that he had really had a lot of personal tragedy. He and his wife had only one child who died when the little boy was very, very young. And he had also had a lot of economic setbacks in his life, and life was not easy. But he was always so happy and joyful. I thought, what's that about? That's not what I was used to. And then I found out later, his wife dumped him because she was tired of living on a teacher's salary. Now that is not very nice, right? That isn't nice at all. But that didn't stop him. He really, really had his students as number one and really cared about them and really made a difference and put a lot of time and effort into both oratory and debate. And that was kind of my first, you might say, example of somebody that I can remember back in my youth, even though I wasn't brought up in a faith tradition, that some people of faith can really be happy and can really make a difference. And it isn't really a crutch, as I was told by my father, that religion is not necessarily a crutch. It's a way of life, of living and breathing and caring about each other. The second person that I can think of is when I started teaching in a private school. I had to go to this program. We spent the whole week at, then it was called Claremont Men's College. It's now Claremont McKenna. And let's just say it wasn't the most exciting thing in the world. And we were told how to teach this particular reading program. But what made it fun was Sister Frances. Sister Frances was cool. Now, even though I was not a person of faith then, not yet, I just so admired her. She had kind of buck teeth and looked a little funny, you might say. And she was just hysterically funny. I mean, she had a way of taking something that was so boring and making fun out of it. And I remember on the last day of our class, she wanted to take a collection for our instructor. And so she had this basket, and it had this thing in there, and it looked like a monkey. She stuck her tongue through it, and I mean, she just we just all died. It was so funny. And another thing that she did was she had gotten a new nightgown. It was bright yellow. And we were on about the 3rd floor of the dorm. And she opened up the window and said, "Hi, everybody. Anybody noticing me?" I thought, oh my gosh. And she's a nun? And then I heard even more things about her. She was from the Imperial Valley. Have you ever been to, you know anything about the Imperial Valley?
No.
It's inland from San Diego. It's hotter than Hades. It's just awful. Oh, you know about the Imperial Valley. Would you want to be here in August?
No.
No, I didn't think so. She taught it, mainly farm children from Mexico. And they would come there, and she taught 1st grade. And her class had like 50 students in it. This was a parochial school. And after this course that she was taking, she was supposed to have a vacation, right? I mean, even nuns get vacations. But then Father, whatever his name was, called her and said, "I don't know what we're going to do. Our caregiver has gotten sick, and there are all these little kids that need to be cared for," because they had the younger children there too that were under kindergarten age. They'd care for them as their parents were out there picking whatever they picked there. I don't know how things grow there because it's so hot, but anyway, she said, "Oh, yes, I'd be glad to." Now, this was not a woman that did just so much of obligation. She was a woman who saw a need and filled it. This is someone I really look up to. And even though, yes, I'm not a Roman Catholic, and I didn't join her in her order or anything like that, but I saw the positive energy that her faith had given to her, and that she had made such a difference in people's lives. That really, really impressed me. And I was just beginning to see how faith can really strengthen people. The last person I wanted to talk about as a beacon of light was one of my former principals. Her name was Dr. Alice Key. She was the principal of Fair Valley. It was called PAU. Principals Administrative Unit, right? Anyway, Dr. Key was getting up there in years, and she was so much fun. You know how boring those meetings are for people, whether you're a teacher or you work in an office and you all have to gather together and they have like an in-service. Boring, right? Very boring. She made things so much fun. She always had games that we played, and she had raffles, and she also spoke with a very animated voice. Now, I started learning more about her. She had a son that was murdered about 10 years earlier. Now, how awful would you feel if you had a child that was murdered? And just a few years before that, her only brother, who she was very close to, had a massive stroke and died. And her husband was very ill. So she, as soon as she would get home, she'd, of course, take care of him. Now, this is a person who had a right to be a little depressed, right? Right? But she lived with such joy. Again, I found out she was a person of really deep, deep faith. And she, you always would remember her because she had a Jaguar. And she was dripping in jewelry. She loved jewelry. And the other thing, too, she liked good-looking guys. And I remember when our speech pathologist had a son who had just come up from New Orleans, who had been teaching down there. He was really tall and not too bad on the eyes. And I remember I had to get some paperwork and carry it to the office. And there she was, hustling him, trying to get a job for him and see that he would do that. And the other thing too, one summer, I think it was the summer before, she hired these firefighters from Arcadia that had bachelor's degrees and had passed their CBEST exam. And these guys were all in their short shorts and they're hosing the kids and they're all running all over the place. I thought, oh, Dr. Keith, you are not dead. It was so much fun. She finally retired at the age of 71. It all stopped. We had this old guy who became our principal. No more fun. No more firefighters with hoses and short shorts. What I'm really trying to say today is I think faith makes a big difference. Not when you go to door and knock on somebody's there and say we have the only truth out there and you have to believe what we say. We live our faith. Actions really do speak louder than words, don't they? And if you as the author of the letter of James said, you know, if you want to know my faith, watch what I do. That your faith and your actions go together. They're not separate. They are blended. It's not an either-or thing. It's a both-and kind of thing. If you really are a person of faith, then you live it. You bring, and the thing is, what I have found is that people of deep faith are usually fun people. They're not all mopey. You know, they talk about the church lips. No fun here. Don't you dare crack a smile. No fun in this place. We are very serious. No, they're fun. There's joy. And the reason there's joy in their hearts is because they love God and they can feel God's love just running right through them. And then they take that love and then they just throw it all out to everybody else. That's what's important. We can become beacons of light and bring a little happiness on a world that truly, truly needs it. Amen. Amen.